Hey there, wise guys. Get ready to take a stroll down Sopranos memory lane as we dive into the life and times of Furio, the Neapolitan mobster who left his mark on The Sopranos. He started out in the big leagues, serving the Zucca Camorra family alongside their formidable boss, Annalisa Zucca. But then, in a move more unexpected than a bada bing at the pork store, he got shipped across the pond to join the Sopranos crew in good old Jersey. Let's delve into the remarkable journey of how Federico Castelluccio landed the role of Furio, the Italian enforcer who despises everything north of his homeland. Back in the day, David Chase was searching for an actor who could not only speak Italian fluently, but also handle himself in the tough world of The Sopranos. On top of that, this character was set to become Carmela Soprano's romantic interest, making the casting even more crucial. However, the auditions did not start off on the right foot. As Terrence Winter revealed on the Talking Sopranos podcast, the initial audition process for Furio was quite a comedy show. "We went through so many guys," he quipped with a grin, "and everybody sounded like they stepped right out of an Abbott and Amp Costello skit. It was, quite frankly, a disaster." Then, like a guardian angel descending upon the casting room, in walked Federico. Winter couldn't help but recall his first impression of Castelluccio, saying, "I said this to Federico, and I swear on my mother's cannoli, he is exactly what I envisioned when I conjured up that character." However, they weren't ready to pop the champagne corks just yet. They needed to be absolutely certain that Federico was the real deal, especially when it came to Furio's combat skills. Thus, the fateful moment arrived. The Sopranos team wanted to see if Federico had the chops to bring Furio to life in a convincing manner. Terrence Winter vividly remembers the tension in the air as Federico prepared to throw a punch. It was as if the fate of the Italian-American mafia rested on that one punch. As Castelluccio threw that punch, Terrence Winter, who had seen his fair share of questionable on-screen fisticuffs, couldn't believe his eyes. He mimed the violence, and I couldn't help but exclaim, "Holy cannoli! This guy is the real deal!" Winter confessed, a grin spreading across his face. Little did they know that this punch would cement Castelluccio's role as Furio, and the rest, as they say, is history. Now let's talk about Furio's journey in the Sopranos series. Furio, with all the subtlety of a mobster trying to find his way through an Olive Garden menu, swiftly ascended the ranks as Tony Soprano's personal protector and enforcer. With a knack for ensuring Tony's safety while keeping the mob's chaos in check, Furio became a beloved character on the show, almost as cherished as a fresh cannoli. Federico Castelluccio's portrayal was so spot on that even the ducks in Tony's pool would quack their approval. Yet life in the mob isn't all cannoli and Sunday dinners. Furio grappled with the moral maze of his criminal career, torn between his allegiance to Tony and his own sense of right and wrong. It was a real-life soap opera, complete with more twists and turns than the plot of a Sopranos episode. Adding to the spicy drama, Furio had a rather complicated relationship with Carmela, Tony's wife. Their interactions were like a game of hide-and-seek in the meat freezer, intense and full of tension. Before his Jersey debut, Furio had quite the resume. He worked for a wealthy Olive Garden owner, not the kind with unlimited breadsticks, and dabbled in some side gigs for the mob queenpin, Annalisa Zucca. However, it was his willingness to take a bullet for Don Vittorio during a fireworks fiasco that really got Tony's attention. Tony, always the mastermind, concocted a plan to import Furio to Jersey. He turned to his buddy Artie Bucco, who agreed to help Furio obtain a work visa by letting him work at his restaurant. Of course, everyone knew Furio's real job was to protect Tony, not serve linguine. Once in town, Furio became the apple of everyone's eye, especially Carmela's. He was more popular than a surprise shipment of fresh prosciutto. But their relationship was as complicated as a mob hit gone wrong. Furio had the hots for Carmela, and she was equally enamored. They'd find an excuse to be near each other, like a pair of lovers in a Shakespearean tragedy. When Carmela visited Furio's house to discuss home renovations, she brought along AJ as her personal chaperone, a real buzzkill for their simmering attraction. On one fateful trip to Italy for his father's funeral, Furio spilled the cannoli beans to his uncle about his feelings for Carmela. His uncle, seasoned in the ways of mob love, issued a stern warning about the dangers of romancing the Don's wife. The only way for Furio to be with Carmela? To take a shot at Tony himself. Talk about a real mobster love triangle. In a later episode of The Sopranos, Furio and Tony found themselves at a wild shindig, where Tony's drunken antics with other ladies left Furio questioning if this guy was even worthy of Carmela. The scene was so chaotic that even Paulie Walnuts would have had trouble cracking a nut. And then, the plot thickened like Mama's marinara sauce. As the two mobsters were about to board a helicopter, Furio had a godfather moment and decided to give Tony a hands-on flying lesson right into the chopper's blades. But hold on to your cannoli, because Furio's loyalty to the family and his old-school mob code stopped him from turning Tony into helicopter Parmigiana. Realizing he could no longer stand beside Tony, Furio made like a magician and disappeared, leaving for Naples like a silent whisper in the wind. He even pulled a Houdini by dropping a voicemail at the Bada Bing at 4:30 in the morning saying, "Ciao, I'm out of here." Carmela, like a caged canary with a secret, later spilled the beans to Tony about her feelings for Furio. Tony, never one to let sleeping dogs lie, promised to give Furio the one-way ticket to the big casino in the sky if he ever crossed paths with him. But here's the real mystery. After Furio's vanishing act, he became as scarce as a white tiger in the Sopranos crew, leaving fans scratching their heads. Now, in a twist as unpredictable as a plot from the show, David Chase, the mastermind behind The Sopranos, intentionally left Furio's fate up in the air. He wanted fans to use their noodles and dream up their own endings, rather than spoon-feeding them with a definitive conclusion. And hey, isn't that what made The Sopranos so legendary? Speaking of canolas, as James Gandolfini, who was our unforgettable Tony Soprano, soared to stardom, he was making demands bigger than Junior after becoming an acting boss. He wanted a fatter wallet, which had the show's producers sweating bullets. To balance the books, they decided to cut some of the supporting cast, and poor Furio got the short end of the cannoli. Money talks, and even in the mob it says, "Arrivederci." But let's shine a spotlight on a fan theory that's been circulating in the dark corners of Sopranos fandom. Some armchair gangsters out there have cooked up a story that Furio met a grisly end at the hands of his own family back in Naples. The reason? To keep Tony Soprano from going all soprano on them over some supposed romance with Carmela. Now forget about it. The idea that Furio's own flesh and blood would off him for a fling is as believable as Vito Spatafor's aspirations of being a male model. And let's not forget that the folks in Naples probably saw Tony as a bigger clown than Richie Aprile in a Napoleon hat. So the thought that they'd go to extremes to please him is about as likely as Paulie Walnuts becoming a vegetarian. In fact, it's more probable that Tony's threat to whack Furio was just a way to give Carmela the old Sicilian stink eye, rather than a concrete plan to send Furio to that great pizzeria in the sky. The Sopranos always had more layers than a grandma's lasagna, and sometimes the mystery is better than the answer. To cap it all off, Furio was the embodiment of a genuine mobster, a shining star among the colorful characters Tony Soprano often found himself surrounded by. He possessed a razor-sharp intellect, movie star looks, an unwavering self-assuredness, a knack for getting the job done, a heart as cold as ice. Yet he had a knack for staying low-key when the situation demanded it. Furio's aversion to golf was only matched by his lightning-fast reflexes, always there to protect you when a pesky bee dared to land on your hat. If you enjoyed this video, be sure to subscribe to Vano VHS and hit the like button. And if you want to show some love to Vano VHS, you can now buy us a coffee. Check out the link on your screens.